It's really Orbital Blues Month, Dan Sylvania. We'll be live in a second. You calm down. And we are live here on Plus One EXP's Roll for Content channel. My name is Tony Vicenda. I'm Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that multiclasses in tabletop game design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. Our hope and desire here at Plus One EXP is to help amazing designers find great players who love their games, and amazing players find great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but once a month I sit down with a special guest to talk about the mechanics behind one of the games that they have designed and how those mechanics help us tell the stories of that game. Today we are sitting down to talk a little bit about Orbital Blues Month, which is launching today over on BackerKit. You can go to ttrpg.link/Orbital Blues Month. It'll take you straight to the dashboard with all of the amazing projects that are live right now, including Outlaws and Corporations by Soul Muppet Publishing and F Infinity Go Beyond the Track, a standalone supplement for Orbital Blues by the team at Plus One EXP. There's a bunch of other amazing folks in our community who have projects going live also, so head over to ttrpg.link/Orbital Blues Month to check those out if you want to. It is not an April Fool's Day joke. Jelly lives and walks among us. Zach, how are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me on, Tony. It's good to be here. Get to chat about some Orbital Blues stuff.
I am super excited to dive in with you. Also, we got to hang out a lot about a month ago. And so I've been in withdrawal ever since. And so this is good for me.
It will never be the same without the pair of us at Gamma, will it? The Game Manufacturers Association organizational expo-y thing. So yeah, lots of Zach and Tony hitting the town, hanging out.
That's right. Hitting the town, hanging out, talking about how British call things. We won't get into that. Come back next week as we dive into Squirty Cream and Baps, two things that British people say that Americans are flummoxed by. But today, for folks who aren't familiar, let's talk first about what Orbital Blues is. And then let's talk a little bit about what Orbital Blues Month is doing, because one of the reasons I wanted to have you on for this is not just promotion, which it is a great reason to have anyone on at some time, but because this is a time where you are inviting people to engage more intentionally with a third-party license for Orbital Blues. Mm-hmm. It's a game that we love here on staff at Plus One EXP. And so I wanted to make it a little bit more of an invitation for our team, for other people out there who are interested in working with Orbital Blues, to be able to dive in a little bit more to what the system is trying to do. So give us the elevator pitch first for Orbital Blues, and then we'll talk about Orbital Blues Month.
So Orbital Blues is a game of sad space cowboys. You play a spaceship full of gig economy workers with depression, trying to make ends meet in this Dust Bowl retro future Americana galaxy. It's a space western. It's interested in kind of playing around in the same ballpark as Cowboy Bebop, as Firefly, as The Mandalorian, as the sort of, spaceship buddy fantasy bits of Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a really sort of quite rules-light game where the rules mostly try to get out of the way and focus on like emotional storytelling and genre emulation. We've been making Orbital Blues games. The last project launched 5 years ago this month. So it's our third crowdfunding project. And obviously this time, rather than just make a game ourselves, we wanted to open up the opportunity for more other people to do it alongside us. a big part of, my organization, Soul Muppet, is about like where we can doing ladder building for other, publishers. We do a lot of knowledge sharing. We used to do a lot of publishing, not so much at the moment, just because we're trying to focus on the stuff that we make in house at the moment, but lifting other people around us. All of our games have the sort of same third-party license that is popular in, with games like Troika, with games like Mothership, with games like Can, with games like Mouse Ritter, where you are with as long as you say this is for Soul Muppet, this is for Orbital Blues, which is made by Soul Muppet Publishing. We aren't Soul Muppet. We are happy for those games to be made, and it's a kind of quite important part of that for us, that we are able to support other people doing this. I'm not going to sit back and pretend that Orbital Blues is playing in the same ballpark as something as big as Mothership or as explosive as Mouse Ritter, but we wanted to be able to run a collaboration month like they did, but with kind of a mix of different organizations, kind of larger ones like Plus One EXP and Stations, but also, working with some new people who've made a bunch of stuff in Orbital Blues before, but haven't run a crowdfunding project before. So kind of, I feel like your Mothership months and your Mouse Ritter months are celebrations of third-party licenses, which are kind of already really popular and running, and people are making stuff for already. Whereas Orbital Blues, for us, it's about like turning something which is nascent, which is starting off, and then like kicking it into overdrive and really like being able to bring the game we make and we share with other people to a wider audience, basically, and be able to share it around there. And part of that is, taking all kinds of different stuff that is available and, running these 6 different projects which feature all kinds of stuff which, inside Soul Muppet, at our small team, we never could have imagined like this kind of variation and breadth of different games, so it's so exciting to see the different stuff that people are able to do while working with the property, basically, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's been cool to see the response. Our team's been super excited about it as we've been prepping F Infinity, getting to dive into it, explore the world in a new and different way. I'm super excited to sit down and talk with you. It's always tempting to just be like, what is the system, right? And so I want to give a little brief. I want to have you give a little brief overview of like, what are the resolution mechanics? What are some of the major elements that help drive Orbital Blues forward? But the two that we kind of talked about diving into before the stream are really like troubles and money, right? Like those are the two things we want to spend a lot of time with. But for folks who haven't played the game before or taken it out the first time, kind of what's the core mechanical rift for resolution and some of the other kind of key mechanical elements in Orbital Blues?
Yeah, absolutely. So the core mechanic basically is a really simple dice roll just to determine what is going to happen in a given situation. Those are called stat checks. You're rolling 2 dice. You're adding one of your 3 stats, your savvy, your muscle, or your grit, and then you're looking for a target 8. Difficulty is handled by the upper hand and against the odds, which are essentially like advantage and disadvantage with the game with the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. That means that you can make a check easier by rolling less dice and either taking the 2 higher ones, the 2 lower ones. That is intended to be a really, really simple baseline for mechanical resolution of like things that will happen in the world. Combat is slightly more complicated, but not much more complicated than that. And kind of this part of the rules is meant to kind of get out of the way in favor of narrative storytelling. And the 2 things which would drive a sad space cowboy is going to be money and how sad they are. So the first thing that is happening is that during character creation, you pick this thing called a trouble, right? Which is essentially a kind of ready-made bundle of questions and role-playing prompts that relates to the saddest thing that's ever happened to you. There's 18 of them in the core book. They take the form of like a couple questions about your backstory that you answer some of, and then answer more of as you play in exchange for this resource called blues. The more questions you answer, the more blues you get. And then also there's a bunch of like role-playing prompts for what an individual, what kind of stuff that type of person would be would do that is a bad idea. And when you role play in line with that trouble, when you basically like play the character you pick for yourself during character creation, when you have these bluesy flashbacks, when you make these ridiculous mistakes, you get blues. And blues is essentially for the game are experience points. Kind of the thing we like to joke about for the game is that this is sad for XP, right? You know, it's not gold for XP. You're not incentivized to go and kill monsters or find treasure or do jobs. You're incentivized to be as sad as possible and to role play your character in line with that like bluesy feeling, basically. And when you get enough blues, you'll be ready to level up. And the form that takes is your character basically like, their troubles brewing, and them essentially having like a really dramatic scene where they confront their troubles head on, either in physical or metaphorical form, which is usually like an argument, a breakdown, a gunfight, a mental health episode, essentially, where your character steps into center stage for a short amount of time, gets a loads of buffs for that one scene, and then leaves play for a short while after that.
Yeah.
So what it essentially creates is a moment where like you're saying to the GM and the other players, like, the emotional stakes for me are here. This is what is happening. I am the main character right now. And you resolve that, and it kind of plays out as you are, as you're playing, basically.
Oh.
So, you've got this mechanic where you're trying to be as sad as you can as fast as possible. And it incentivizes people basically to do a load of role playing in line with this trouble they've created. And it's essentially like a bundle of rules which like allows you to generate a backstory, create like relationships with contacts and places on the fly, come up with character traits as you're playing, inform your interactions with the rest of the party, and also like give you these fun ideas of how to role play in line of that with this set of experience questions at the end. So essentially, in like 8 bullet points and a little bit of text at the start, it creates all these incentives to play these like larger than life people with depression.
Now I've got Devil in a Bottle and Higher Cause up right next to us right now on stream, just so people can get a sense of like how compact these are, right, and how tight they are. This is something we generate a lot of new ones for F Infinity specifically, like because this is such a core part of what drives the game forward. And our writers did an initially great job, but in development, like we can kind of consistently found, hey, we were having to tell them like, make this worse, like make this harder, like let people get sad, like it was this is not an actual example, but it was things akin to like, oh, you really hate your job, why don't you like it so much? And we're like, no, like ask a question that's going to define something like in the world. So let's talk through a little bit more about one of these. Do you have a favorite trouble?
Devil in the Bottle is a really good one,
Okay.
but my favorite one is Party Animal. If you scroll to that. Let's
look at Party Animal real quick, because I want to walk through kind of like what your, as you were designing these, like what was going through your mind. What are the things that you were thinking about? How do you see this kind of coming to life within play? So we'll walk through the entire trouble on the whole. Or let's walk through it bit by bit, and then we'll kind of have you break it down for us. So, Party Animal, you know how to live. Let no one tell you anything else. They each start with kind of this evocative line that either gets you on track with it or gives you a little bit more about it. And then it dives into answer to during your character creation. There's a set of prompts, and then the things that actually give you blues. So if somebody's sitting down to make a trouble for the first time, or as we're looking at Party Animals, like what were you thinking about? What were you hoping this would evoke? And what are questions they should be asking themselves?
So the reference point to me is that I wrote this game in the second half of 2020, mostly, at least the bits of it that I wrote, because the other co-creators of the game, Sam and Josh, kind of handle. Sam does most of like the vibes and the adventure content, and I kind of wrote most of the mechanics, and then Josh is our like artist and world building guy. So, but my role in the mechanics of it came in kind of quite late, kind of working with a bunch of the stuff that Sam had already written and just like punching it up to add, make these things, make it feel bigger, basically, and more impactful. So I was playing Disco Elysium around the time this came out. If you haven't played Disco Elysium, you should. It's an amazing sort of CRPG where you're playing a sort of depressed amnesiac cop who's, you know, all kinds of things are happening to him, but it has this amazing mechanic called a thought cabinet, right? And the thought cabinet is essentially the character sheet, the inventory specifically for what you're thinking about at a given moment, right? So you have these slots in it, and you decide what it is you're meditating on for a given amount of time. And that is like what you're thinking about as your character's like walking around and talking to people. And it gives you a little set of bonuses. And when you've finished thinking about it for a certain amount of time, it reforms into a new idea. And then you either keep it in your character sheet for a new set of bonuses, or you discard it and start thinking about something else, right? And that was like simply one of the most incredible bits of like games design you've ever seen, because like you've got this sheet which is like what your character's ruminating on. It's literally inventory for your mind in a given moment. And so the trouble was kind of my attempt at translating that into a role-playing game that doesn't have a computer to help you tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
So these 5 questions, you're trying to pack like as many thoughts or questions about the backstory as you can, so that by just answering 2 of these, you can have like a really strong start, and then you can go back and answer the rest of them, or answer more of them again as you're playing, right? So just looking at these, where do you go to blow off steam? That allows you to generate like a habit for your character, or a place you used to go, or like an understanding of like, this is a guy that goes to like, you know, drug dens or sleazy parties or discos or casinos, or goes to a friend's house and just, you know, whatever it happens there, right? That's generating your place. What's the worst crime you've done while just trying to have a good time, right? That is adding like a few different things on top of each other, which is like, what type of criminal you can be? And you are a criminal because you're playing this game, and, you know, there's not much you can do about playing this game while following all the corporate laws that exist. Probably wouldn't get you very far, but it's giving you like an activity, and also this idea that like you're doing that, but it's not really your focus. Like there's something else that's interesting you more, right? Who do you party with as a way of generating contacts and a way of generating rivals, right? Because it doesn't say who do you party with and they're your best friend, right? You can pick that button as you are playing to say, oh, this guy we're hanging out with, I used to go drinking with him somewhere, right? Or you can say, oh, I've been to this spaceport before. This guy, I know this lady because we used to go to a nightclub together on Savala 6, right? You know, you can generate those sort of things. Narcotics is the same thing. And then the ultimate core of it, right? What feelings are you burying deep beneath drugs and bad decisions, right? This isn't just like a set of activities you're doing. This is like a behavior pattern, which is concealing emotions and also ending up in you making really bad decisions, right? And doing crimes. If you scroll down from Party Animal, you can see more of those experience prompts, right? So you can look at, you know, you enjoy yourself more than you probably should. You do a very stupid thing in a very serious situation. You cover up your true feelings with debauchery, right? And each one of those is like giving you a route to play a really interesting character with a lot of quite complicated emotions. And that's happening from like 8 bullet points. And all of these troubles are like, you know, kind of resulting from that. And the best ones kind of almost read like poetry, right? If you jump to Bloodthirsty, right, which is on page 39, you know, it's like talking about the first fight you ever won, what scars you wear with pride, what enemies have you worked hard to earn, when was the last time you killed someone you only meant to maim, and which one of your old friends now fears your brutality, right? You can get a really clear picture of what that person is like thinking and feeling about as they're playing. And then bloodthirsty down the bottom, the 3 prompts are: you lose your temper, you reach for weapons before words, you leave a foe cowering in fear. That's like a linear action plan for what this character wants to do. And if you've got this kind of person, they're going to get loads of blues, but it's all going to come tumbling down on them afterwards, right? Because none of these are stable ways to live. You are a self-employed spaceship person just trying to do their best to make ends meet while dealing with all of these feelings which are bigger than you, right? And that leads to this kind of this gameplay which is designed to feel like as large as possible, these kind of emotional notes as you're playing the game, you know. Because you know what a trouble's brewing for a bloodthirsty character is going to look like. You know what a trouble's brewing for a character with party animal is going to look like, right? It all becomes very clear and very obvious to what kind of messes your characters are about to make, you know.
Yeah. What when you you're trying to fix it on the stream and I'm trying to fix it at the same time.
I'm sorry. I'm moving around. My camera is very
you're all right. You're all right. I was like,
I move around a lot.
moving it,
the
ADHD.
ADHD.
You're great. So for me, I think, you know, having played the game a number of times, I think that blues are such a great way to drive characters forward. I was just we've published a couple of great belonging outside belonging games. We talk a lot about lures, weak moves, strong moves. There's some of the same type of incentiving around character play here, right? Blues are XP. You're not getting tokens to push things around a board or exert your will, but there's that same kind of building of relationships like you were talking about earlier in some of the questions. There's the same kind of incentivization for building that up so you can have those strong moments as well. And so there's some kind of similar narrative prompting that happens through these. I always feel like when I've played Orbital Blues, this also feels very player driven, right? Like how often do you, as somebody who runs the game, or as you've seen other people run the game, how often do you see GMs like and game runners prompting into this versus players just using them to kind of drive their character?
Yeah, I feel like when you're getting started, it's really good for the GM should kind of like be helping sort of make sure people like exploring their troubles as much as you can. But ultimately, it's a player-driven mechanic, right? And not every character has to be trying to get as many blues as possible, because like by creating these prompts, none of them say, and then you are a sick and cool bastard who everyone loves, you know. By pressing these buttons, you are bringing your own consequences down on yourselves, right? Because that old drinking buddy of yours isn't going to give you a free favor. They're going to want something, right? You know, never mind if you start pressing the who did I last kill when I planned on maiming them button that bloodthirsty one has, right? You know, so it's on the players to kind of make those experiences happen, but it's on the GM to respond to those hooks that the players give them in terms of locations, behaviors, circumstances, right? I often say that when you're running Orbital Blues, it is your job to dangle as many things in front of your players as you can that are just out of reach, right? You know, so that everything's not comfortable. To do this, it has to be messy, right? Because, you know, the media that we're talking about, they don't win at the end of every episode. They sort of try to get there. They almost handle it, and then they're back to square one again, right? Yeah. And they're once more eating, you know, noodles without any beef in them, you know, because they're skint, as you always kind of end up being in the real world as well, I guess sometimes, you know. So yeah.
Awesome. If folks have questions about troubles, making them, playing them, anything like that, this is a great time to toss them into chat. Let's talk a little bit while folks are thinking about that before we hop over to talking about money specifically. Tell me a little bit about the project y'all are running right now. You've got Outlaws and Corporations going. So before
absolutely.
we talk about corporations, tell me about Outlaws and Corporations.
So Outlaws and Corporations is a book that has been written by Sam and Josh, who are the other two co-creators of Orbital Blues. Sam has written the section on corporations. Josh has written the section on Outlaws. This is the first time that like Josh has penned a full half of the book with us, so I'm really excited to see how that's going. Sam and Josh are both like really prolific writers in their own time, as well as Josh doing all the art for Orbital Blues. So it's kind of the way I've been pitching it to people is like a book in opposition with itself. It's like a book struggling with an idea, which is like, what is the universe here? Half of it is this is about outlaws. It's about like the criminals and the dusty back streets and the cowboys and the wanderers and the organizations and the places that they can be found in the universe. And smushed together with it in this kind of Tet Besh style, which means like head to foot, basically, head to tail, rather. There is another book called Corporations, which shares a spine but has a different cover, and then both the books meet in the middle. And Corporations is about like exploring the enormous capitalistic organizations which dominate the setting, and sort of the, you know, it's not like that there's a good side and an evil side, because there's lots of horrible people in the outlaw section as well, you know.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a different sense of an idea that like half of the book is about like freedom and rebellion and independence, and the other half is about like these organizations that seek control and the massive profits that come with it. So when we did Afterburn last year, a few years ago now, actually, back in 2023, we delivered like 6 different products. You know, there was like,
oh, I know,
a solo game, there was an adventure expansion, there was a 5-book slipcase, there was a VHS box set full of pamphlet adventures, right? Whereas this one, we were just like, we're just going to make one book, which is the coolest and slickest book we've ever tried to make, you know, and really just commit hard to this weird physical bit where the form factor of the book dictates the fact that like everything is written in mirrors to itself, and is meeting in the middle, is in this sort of, is antagonistic to its own heart, its other half, you know, and sort of seeing where the players fall in that power struggle, right? Yeah. And presenting a bit more about like the setting zoomed out, because like when we've written these adventures before, as you read Orbital Blues, you get an understanding of like what the setting is about. You know, the art is mostly delivered through like advertising materials and business cards and company slogans and, you know, sort of in-world skeuomorphic diegetic artifacts. But we haven't actually said like, in the year 2556, the alpha colonies of the Sol Specularum conquered the Outer Rim. Like, we haven't done that.
And that's all canon. Everything you just said is the actual formal canon.
Formal canon delivered, yeah. But we haven't said what that is, because like we're not really interested in answering those kind of questions. Like, and I would want you to give the answer that suits the most for your table. But we've given, and when we've written these adventures in the past, we've focused on like specific places, specific people, and the stories that matter in those locations. Whereas Outlaws and Corporations is really zooming out quite a bit and looking at like lots of different little areas and kind of weaving together this tapestry of the galaxy that is like definitely not as complete as the deep dive investigations of the specific sectors we've looked at in the adventures we've published, but kind of zooming out and asking more a bit of questions. Because the other important thing about Orbital Blues is that everything that someone has written for an Orbital Blues adventure, that is, even if it's third party, has the space to be true. You know, we haven't like defined what the galaxy is, or, you know, what the dates are, or who, you know, there's certainly some big factions that we're interested in, but it's definitely not like as monolithic a setting as something like Traveller, for example, you know, where like there's a very strong idea of what the corporations are doing and how many editions of their role-playing game they have. You know?
Yeah, what the corporations are doing with the new editions of those
With the new editions
the
of
role
Traveller, yeah.
playing game.
Yeah.
Speaking of corporations and outlaws, no, and Chris in the chat brought it up, having an anti-canon approach to the way that you're exploring the world gives that space, and it lets GMs create choices for their table on what they're going to pull in to help root their world and drive the specific type of narrative that they want to move forward. And it's such a vibrant way to create games. The more you nail that canon down, the harder that it gets to give people that kind of freedom. Also, the harder it gets to pick up a game and be like, I can just run this, right? Like the more and more that you front load on people. So Orbital Blues strikes such a great implied setting concept with all the art and the little touches that y'all do through all that. And most of the supplements that I've seen and all of the supplements that are funding right now, like I'm gobsmacked at how like absolutely gorgeously they're all doing it. So
I mean, the kind of the sort of faded in-world advertising energy of a lot of this stuff leads itself to so many different adaptations, and that's one of the things why I've been loving Orbital Blues so much as like, you know, at least a small part alongside Josh and Sam of like creating the original game and like establishing what like our aesthetic was, is that has been like picked up and ran with in so many different directions by 5 other people now, 5 other groups of people, all of which have their own inspirations, you know, and like F Infinity looks completely different to, you know, the other stuff that's been done there, as all the other things look like themselves uniquely, because like it's not a, you know, I think it speaks to, I think there's something even more intense about the fact that like we don't present to you a canon for the game and an aesthetic that it has to be followed or a set of rules. It's because we haven't internally agreed what that stuff is. Like I have ran several extremely long Orbital Blues campaigns, which means that for my personal game, I know what the history of the galaxy is, right? And what the big sectors are and what the biggest corporations are and what it matters. But like Sam would have a completely different set of answers to any questions you gave him, as would Josh, right? And I think Josh's would be the most detailed, but the least interested in using them in games, right? Because Josh doesn't really run role-playing games that much, mainly just makes absurd quantities of extremely detailed art for them. So like, it's not that like there isn't a unified canon that we could present to you if we wanted, because just as the writing styles and the lore of the game differs, the sort of music and the vibes and the emotions of the games we're writing differs. Like, you know, my Orbital Blues is really interested in jazz and the blues. Sam's is much more invested in like early rock and roll with like a lot of like Rolling Stones and Bruce Springsteen and Billy Nelson, Willie Nelson, I've just forgotten everyone.
Willie Nelson. I wasn't gonna.
But you know what I mean,
Yeah,
right?
I did.
You know, and then Josh's aesthetic touch points are even more completely different than that. So yeah,
love it. Let's talk about the other side of that, then, the thing that both outlaws and corporations have a lot of focus on. Let's talk about money in the game, how it drives it forward. Credits and debts specifically are kind of the two sides of this. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in Orbital Blues, there is a real focus on the idea that like you have this spaceship, right? This thing you generate during character creation, which is like the sort of driving. It's your sense of freedom, right? It's your family. It's your place you go together. But there's also an understanding that like this freedom that you've chosen, being an outlaw, financially is going to eat you alive, right? Because you don't have a job. There is no stability to anything. And, you know, anybody who has owned a sufficiently old car will know that while you learn to love the bumps on the road and the noises it makes as you're driving, and sometimes how long it takes the radio to turn on, you know, that is also an endless pit of money of things that must be fixed, otherwise your car will stop working. And that is even more true when the spaceship is also the place you live and your method of employment. as well as how you get around. So there's this sort of very fixed idea in Orbital Blues that is very relevant to stuff like Firefly and stuff like Cowboy Bebop, that your ship and living on it will eat every single dollar that you have, right? So we don't really track currency in the game, right? That's not something that's particularly, because I feel like any role-playing game with currency, like I'm playing D&D at the moment, right? I'm playing a Beck Me D&D campaign, which is gold for XP, lots of money is flying around, and like the moment that money is real, if you're not in like a punishing economic doom spiral with the taxes you have to be paying and how much your retainers are costing, right, or how much food is, you will end up with $1 million, and at some point you'll just have to buy a castle, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't work in the genre that we're playing. So
right.
Money was out the window as we were designing it, and what we instead ended up is this like credit and debit system where like you're going to start with a little bit of equipment that doesn't really work, and there's a baseline assumption that any amount of money that you could earn while you are playing is going to be swallowed up by the maintenance of your spaceship. So if your debts are more than your credits at the end of a session, you end up having to, balance the books and either, basically have something slightly bad happen to you, or you have a little bit of money and you can maybe fix your ship or deal with a loan or pay off someone you hate or, bank some very small little savings thing. It is pretty much always going to be a situation that like the thing that is driving you to keep adventuring is this money that you are seeking for at all costs, right? To try and get these smallest of benefits out of the other end of in this kind of end of session downtime system that you're sharing across the system. Literally the fuel you are using to get in between systems and planets is going to slowly drive you further into poverty,
Yeah.
And repairs will eat everything, and so will bullets and medical care. So, it's definitely that kind of forces this dynamic where like your characters are just constantly looking for the next payday and knowing that if they don't, they're never going to get where they need to be.
Yeah.
And maybe getting there at all is impossible, But this is not a game where you will ever get $5 million and buy a castle,
Right.
Like that is not possible.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a very simple like process for balancing the books at the end of each session. Like basically like, hey, if you don't have the money to take care of everything, you can keep flying, but like here's what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah.
It's constantly driving the story forward in really interesting ways. Same thing if you've got more credits than debt. So I think in a campaign, like an ongoing campaign, I think it's clear how these things kind of start to play out and drive things forward. Is there a way, like in a one shot or a two shot, that you use to kind of bring to the forefront, besides just telling people, hey, you've got a lot of debt, like you've got to take care of things? Like, are there things that you've done in the past to kind of put that to people so that they start feeling the edge of that right away?
So, yeah, Orbital Blues really shines in these like campaigns, which I call arcs, which are like 4 to 8 sessions, basically, where like your characters are going to be able to get a couple troubles and like, level up, have a few of their troubles brewing, and kind of be dealing with sort of an ongoing situation in a particular region as they probably get in with some kind of group in the local area and build out there. But one shot's a little bit more difficult because like the driving point of the game is to try and get your troubles to brew, right? Try to kick this up into full speed and try to like get these really awesome narrative moments at the end. And the sad news is that inside a basic one shot, you're probably not going to get a really strong emotional hook like that. So what I tend to do is if I'm playing a one shot, I reduce the amount of blues needed to brew your trouble. It goes from, I think it's 8 normally, I put it down to like 4 or 5. So it's possible you can answer it within a single session. And then for one shots generally, like in media res is just like the way to start these sort of things. And like you are doing a job this is happening. You need to deal with this. There is this person who you promised to do this thing for, and they're going to be pissed if you don't do it. Is like a really strong and basic initial starting point.
Yeah.
You know, you want to get someone on a job, you want to get things happening as soon as possible, because like nothing is worse in a one shot than like somebody spending an hour planning, right? You know, you want to be doing things, you want to be kicking down doors, you know, and that's why like starting maybe even after the door is down is like often the best move, you know. And I think the general thing that is true with role playing is that the longer your campaign is, the more you can afford it to feel like a sort of sandbox thing where everything is off rails, you can move around, interact wherever you want. Whereas like the shorter it is, the better time you're going to have trying to railroad it and make sure everything happens. You know, my favorite Orbital Blues one-shot adventure is the one I made for Rogue Anthems. It's called Voidlock Tombstone. Your guys have basically found on their spaceship the ruin of a corporate fast and light nuclear submarine, like a sort of just bombardment glass cannon ship. And there's this basic assumption as you do it that like within the next 6 or 7 hours, a corporate warship is going to show up. And if you are still here, it's going to be extremely bad for everyone. Right. So just starting somebody with like that thing we were talking about earlier, right? That risk, that thing you want to be reaching for, that thing to push for in the sort of narrative design of the scenario you're doing. That is the carrot you want to dangle in front of them. And then, you know, off screen somewhere, there is a corporate kill ship coming towards you. And that is the stick to the other end of that carrot, you know. So in one shots, if you want this stuff to happen, you need to make things move, right? Yeah. And money is not something you can use as much there. That's how you manage the campaign. How you manage the one shot tends to be to do with like good narrative design and making sure that those troubles aren't irrelevant because it's a one shot. You know, so there's definitely things to do.
Yeah, no, part of me is just like that, and I think that tension is largely narrative, right? Like, I think that in media res thing, being able to say like, here's where you're at, somebody getting hurt, like hits those credits and debts like right away. Like, there's ways that those narrative beats immediately start to pull that in. But I think that's a great answer also too, because sometimes games are just designed to be really good at a certain length and pretty good the rest of the time also too. So no, I
think it's one of the weaknesses of my games design. I really like writing games for the types of campaigns that I run, which tend to be like 4 to 8 weeks before scheduling falls apart, you know, so
I mean, I don't know that I would call that a weakness. I think more games need to just really be, and I think more games are doing this, be considerate of like, what is the thing you're trying to do and designing for that. And oftentimes like designing the thing that you want, you're just going to find the other people who are like, yeah, me too, along the way when you're doing that. So, no, like I said, it's something we've always really enjoyed. I've never gotten a chance to play a longer campaign and dive into those elements, so I just get to do a little bit every once in a while, and I'm always really excited about
every 2 years. I come on
every couple of years you come around. I'm not even getting to play this time around. I'll just watch from behind the scenes and cackle in enjoyment. It's been but no, I think you know, looking at those two things in tandem with each other are also really great. Like, what drives those immediate in-play narrative moments by trying to ramp up your troubles, what drives the overall campaign structure also too, were really great to kind of dive into, because there is such a consideration in Orbital Blues of creating the structures that allow you to do that. But they're not in the like, oh, roll some dice and try to get over an 8. Like, that's like, it's a good system. It's also, but it's not the real strength of what's driving this. So I loved getting to sit down and kind of hear you articulate that. If people have questions about the campaign finances or the money, specifically troubles, or any other part of Orbital Blues, now's a great time to add things in. It was also really great, or add questions in. Let us know. We're happy to ask Zach while we have them. It's been also great to listen to, because like, we have started talking about the money side of things, but like within F Infinity, like, corporations are positioned differently, right? You're still making the choice of like, hey, like, do you want a corporate sponsor? Like, do you want to accept money because you'll have a ship and you'll have resources and credits, but you'll also have things you owe that company now.
Yeah.
Thinking through corporations as sponsors, like it was really great to see the Corporation and Outlaws book coming, because it's something that is very core to, like, the racing scene that we're looking at. But then also thinking about, like, what are the debts and credits? Like we've been talking about that the whole way through, of like, how much is, and this is the part where we're in playtesting right now, like, what is the right amount of money for it to cost to take a racer out? What is the right amount of money to win when you win a race, right? And some of that, the basic templating does a really good job of providing examples for. Like, sending a racer out is expensive. It is a high performance vehicle, and yeah, you're going to put it on a ship, like at the end, to fly it from planet to planet if you can afford to. But like, you also have to fuel it and repair it after every single race. Like, it is
and also
a deep money
paint
pit.
on the side of it a advertisement for potato chips.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise all that stuff is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. And so there's so many of those different elements that come into it. It was such a great way to take what Orbital Blues is doing and kind of like crank it up to 11, but then also, like, do we need to give out more credits? Is it just a bigger money sap so that you are forced to go look for those sponsors in a way more intentional way? Like, there's a whole lot of interesting questions that we got to open up as we were like diving into it and starting to crack things open, and looking at it.
I think I definitely want to like build into that question, like, how good is your spaceship? Like, if you are kind of just like a sick freak with a bucket of bolts who's making things work, like, those are a really different set of questions to like, and this thing goes at the speed of light, and it is a sleek vessel that's been commissioned for this precise purpose, right?
Yeah.
And then once you answer that, that's going to lead into like what the troubles are for your crew, essentially, right? It sounds like it's a really interesting thing to design for. I see a question from Chris.
We do have a question from Chris. What kind of third-party Orbital Blues adventures would you love to see in the future?
So I think one of the things that's really interesting about this project is that, like, none of these were something I ever could have imagined or written myself. Like, when I first heard about F Infinity, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Because, like, space racing was something that Lynn Cadega had been talking about doing an adventure with Soul Muppet about for ages, and we kind of never get it to line up. I'm super happy that Lynn's working on your project. But, like, that's not something I don't know anything about, either, like, Formula One or the sort of, like, US NASCAR style of things. And then, like, the romance adventure that we've seen in Paramore, that's just like not the kind of thing that I normally put in my own games personally. So it's fascinating to see that all that kind of stuff appear. And then what I'd really like to do is I'd like people to try and tackle Orbital Blues in different genres of sci-fi. So it is a little bit less Western and a little bit more in other types of sci-fi available. We haven't really seen any Orbital Blues, like, frontier colonization or survival stuff. I'd love to see that. We haven't seen any Orbital Blues, like, police procedurals. I'd really like to sort of have a sort of thing involving some more like urban crime elements there. I would love to see Orbital Blues does spies as well, because there's all of this stuff that I kind of wrote in the Afterburn book about, like, the last great corporate war, which is involving like lots of sort of information security, these kind of sad space spies, right, trying to uncover where these various things were and get all these documents and prove what's happening and do all these kind of black ops missions. Like, I've implied that there are like entire corporate security wings with faster than light submarines and probe ships and informational gathering drones that are like present in the galaxy. And also just like other types of sci-fi in general, like, I'd love to see a sort of Orbital Blues take on kind of Star Trek-esque like 5-year mission exploration scientist kind of stuff. Because the other thing is we haven't touched aliens at all, and no one has written anything that touches aliens whatsoever. And like we didn't write it because we weren't interested in them, but I would love to see somebody who is interested in writing that type of sci-fi where the human condition can be explored more through the lens of something non-human, which is you know, a classic way that Star Trek in particular has like always talked about people, right? And so I think there's like tons of spaces for like stuff in the setting that is focusing less on outlaws and more on different types of people. Like, you know, we've done racers here for your project, right? But, you know, there's definitely stuff to do with, and there's some space truckers in the Infinity of Ships adventure that's scrolling down on screen right now.
Yep.
But I'd love to see, you know, sad space spies, sad space scientists, sad space soldiers, sad space explorers. You know, there's so many different options for like different directions you can take stuff within the setting. So I hope that, and yes, Chris, you are allowed to put aliens in Orbital Blues.
Yeah.
You're not meant to, but they probably might exist somewhere.
We certainly, I know a number of the planets that we have local species that play a huge role, and some of them are well, I mean, play to find out. Like, who knows if they're sentient or not? But the weir folk of Slow, Quinn's adventure that'll be in the quick start we're dropping next week is going to be like they are giant apes that will hop onto your ship if you get into their territory because they do not like you being there. And so, I mean, you know, we're excited to see kind of how people get into some of that. If we unlock my stretch goal, Gulp, the Gassers United on Leviathan Prime Union is there are giant leviathans, all kind of sandworms that float around in the depths of the gas giant on Gulp also too. So
I mean that basically sounds like indigenous Earth flora that's just kind of made its way into a spaceship.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's not an alien. That's not an alien. You know.
Well, I mean, the leviathans are certainly not Earth anything. But who knows what those?
Yeah, who knows what those guys in lab coats can do these days, Tony? Who knows?
Who knows what they did, what they've done, or what they've discovered without telling any of us. This has been great. I know that there's 6 projects, right? We're gonna next, if people want to dive into each of the projects in Orbital Blues, we're going to be back next week for Intrepid Merchants. We're going to be touching on all of the projects individually as we go through, along with some other cool stuff that's happening in the indie RPG space this month. But so for folks who are out there for the general Orbital Blues, there's some extras if people back different projects at different levels. But y'all have also set up a sticker pack and some other goodies. So the more projects people back, the more cool stuff they're going to get. What are some of the things that people can look forward to from Orbital Blues Month generally while they're out there backing today as some of those extras?
So Orbital Blues is obsessed with music, right? You know, we've made 3 cassette albums now of a range of different styles from 2 different artists, and we've brought back our friend Behold, who did the Godspeed cassette from Orbital Blues Afterburn. And he's making what we're calling the collaboration cassette, which is there is going to be a single from each of the 6 projects, probably 2 at this rate if we decide to do the full half an hour. And that's going to be a whole load of different music that is going to be happening in loads of different ways. You'll get the kind of download MP3 of whichever project you back. You'll get that single. And then if you back Outlaws and Corporations, and just because we're sorting all the shipping out, so you guys don't have to bother with any of that, Outlaws Corporations and 3 of the projects, you will get a sticker sheet with a sticker for each of the 6 projects, and a cassette, a physical cassette that will work on a cassette player should you still own one for some godforsaken reason. And then you can use that to, like, you know, play those different soundtracks you're playing and hear the sounds of what Orbital Blues could be. Right, what different music has been inspired by all these various projects. And then the top level pledge, if you manage to grab everything, is that I have written an adventure which I'll be running on the stream in a couple of weeks.
We're streaming here on Plus One EXP in a couple of weeks.
Here on Plus One EXP
with some amazing people.
Star cast of special guests on the 26th and 27th of April in the final weekend of Orbital Blues Month.
I'll be here.
We'll be playing Atmospheric Breakup, which is an adventure I'm writing right now, which is going to be made. It's going to be quite short, probably a sort of like a pamphlet or slightly longer. And that's something that hopefully we're going to get to be able to explore as we're playing. So yeah, there's a couple different bits available, and obviously there's all kinds of incredible different items and stretch goals that will be available across the different projects. But I really encourage anybody, if you have listened to all this whole podcast and not checked out all of these different individual projects, to kind of see all the different inspirations visually that can exist within the setting. That's really good. We're also like £75 off funding Orbital Blues Outlaws Corporations.
Let's do it. Let's do it right now. Somebody hop over there. Just make.
We're just gonna have to hang out, I think, until
it happens.
Somebody backs and it funds. I think. I know we're meant to finish in negative 2 minutes. But
yeah. Well, we have 2 projects that have already funded. Also, we've got. I know that it was Greenlight. Greenlight Express was the first one to fund. It's a train adventure from the station guys. What is the other one that funded? I haven't even looked through yet.
It's Vaporwave Wanderlust, which is a
awesome.
Sort of
Graham is such a great designer.
Dreamscape sci-fi digital hacking adventure from Graham Turner of Understory Games.
Yeah. That one looks great. I love Graham.
Yeah,
so good. I think we're going to be the last ones to fund. That's not like being humble. We just have the second.
Yeah, you're
largest.
Still already halfway there.
We're doing great. I'm not worried.
I'm very happy.
I stopped worrying a couple hours ago. Actually, about an hour in, I stopped worrying.
Over the finish line. £15,000 for
awesome.
Blues Outlaws and Corporations. Isn't that grand?
Half of the project's funded. Man, what? We just got to get the other half now. It's going to be great. It's been a blast to dive into the Orbital Blues universe a little bit more. Wes, who's been leading up writing, has been doing a cool job building the system. Like I said, next week for Intrepid Merchants, we are going to look in more detail at each of the 6 projects, talk about what we see happening, what we love, what we don't. Our community of designers has already been talking to each other a lot about what we see, giving feedback to each other. But I want to be able to dive a little bit deeper into it. And then we are going to do, we may do 2 Now You've Seen It this month, but at least one of the ones we're doing this month, we're going to have Josh Demansky and Elliot, More Blueberries, step into our Now You've Seen It format, which is a 3-way interview where we have 2 guests on who read each other's work and look for moments of connection, resonance, and dissonance with each other. It's been a fan favorite format that we do once a month, usually with our Zine.Club projects, but not exclusively. So Elliot is going to read what is currently done for Paramore and look at some of the beats of it. And then Josh is going to read The Wanderer and talk about what they see in each of those works, ask each other questions, and do a little bit of a deep dive for that also too. So I'm really excited to bring that into Orbital Blues Month also. So we'll have something here every Wednesday through the end of the month. Plus we are going to be doing a stream of F Infinity with Wes hosting that. And then we are going to have, like Zach already mentioned, a bunch of great folks on at the end of the month. I also know, like, in addition to music, like we're going to be doing songs for every planet because we've got a great, F-Zero vibe going underneath a lot of stuff, including Tony Tran just killed that video. I don't know if you went and watched the F Infinity video yet, but Tony,
I don't know if I've seen it yet.
We dropped it. We premiered it at launch, so it was not
cool.
up.
I've definitely not seen it then.
You've been busy. It was not up until launch.
Working or desperately trying to avoid looking at numbers on back of kit.
Beal stuff is dope, but we regularly have Joe Vacinda, same last name intentionally, who has their doctorate in experimental sound. Do tracks for us, who's going to be doing a track for every planet that we unlock on our stretch goals, along with some other ones. It's cool to see how much music is, like, how much people picked up on the vibe of like music being a key part of the universe. You've done a great job of like sharing that, and I think it's been really great to see it pop up in other people's projects beyond just having the Behold tracks, people being like, well, here's the inspiration music. Here's the other thing we're doing. Here's what we're excited about too. So it's been absolutely great. Oh, look, it's Behold. Is that Behold in the chat uh, right now? Hearing us talk about them. Here actually we'll do it right now. I'm just gonna you have to watch it on your end. You won't be able to hear it. I'm just gonna show people the video because Tony killed it, and I'm gonna use.
I'm gonna have to turn my own Twitch stream on. This is exciting.
Let me embiggen it real quick, and it may be way too loud to start, but we'll figure that out as we go. All right, here we go. 3, 2.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, Tony posted up a. Oh wait, nobody could see that. Fuck! I didn't transition it. That's so great. Here we go again.
Oh.
Tony had posted up just like a vaporwave image that they had thrown on a projector on a wall at one point in the Discord server while we were working, and I was like, "Yeah, that's it. This is the video. This is how the video is happening.
This is the video. You should do that."
And so it's been a blast. Of just like they put the final version together like yesterday, but we had the concept done for about a month, and it's just been really cool to see it actually. But the Behold music absolutely like brought it all together and made it easy to be like, yeah, we've got the strong vibes, and just the ability to throw that like cassette futurism in a little bit more intentionally was super fun. So if you want to find all these projects, you go to ttrpg.link/Orbital Blues Month. Zach, if people want to follow you, hear all your wise and sage sayings, find out more about what Soul Muppet is up to, what's the best place/way for them to do that?
Okay, so the number one place you need to be is on the Soul Muppet website, which you can find is soulmuppet-store.co.uk. That has a link to our mailing list, and if you sign up to that, you get a free quick start of every single Soul Muppet game available to you, as well as a bunch of free adventures as well that kind of go alongside that. There's like 2 extra Orbital Blues pamphlet adventures that are really great. I am available at Jelly Muppet on most places, and you can find us at Soul Muppet or at Soul Muppet RPG, depending on the platform. But the best place to chat to us generally is like on Discord. There's links to the Soul Muppet Discord on the website, and generally for this month, it's all going to be about back kit and following along and finding all the different places that you can hang out with us and chat about Orbital Blues.
Awesome. I got one last question for you, because we keep on discussing, we don't know. If we have a flash funding goal, if we fund in the first 48 hours, which I would love to, every physical tier backer gets a car air freshener to put in the vehicle of their choice so that they can be inspired to break the speed of sad and go beyond the track. Besides victory, what do you think the air freshener should smell like?
Ooh. So one of the things that I think is very antithetical to Orbital Blues is a lot of car air fresheners specifically go for like pine as a theme, like kind of something that's like loamy and green and warm, whereas like the smell of Orbital Blues is required to sort of be very dry and raspy and more of a sort of blue or an orange, right? And so I think that you need to like hit a sort of a citrus note or something, like a nasty citrus is like what I'd be aiming for your car air freshener.
Nasty citrus.
Nasty citrus is the genre, I'm afraid. That's
Love
what
it.
you're gonna have to shoot for.
Well, the good news is that the backers are going to get to vote because backer has that built in. But also, I'll make sure nasty citrus is one of the options, and that people and we will curate towards a non-pine concept.
I think you'd be fine, but like there are very few trees in Orbital Blues.
No, I get it. I think that's great.
Terraforming is about, but like you don't want you want kind of, it's either that or you want like this was freshly cleaned in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a very difficult smell to get, which is why I kind of settled on cheap citrus.
So either new car with an edge of like bleach, or nasty citrus.
God, we are going to make people's spaceships smell bad, right? This is well. I hope that goal is hit. That does sound fun. I didn't think of doing that sort of thing. That would have been much funnier.
If not, it will be available as an add-on afterwards for people who really want it, because we're pretty committed to the idea. I am not a fan of early bird goals, but I am a fan of, hey, if we do this quickly, everyone just gets something extra. Like that is a huge thing for me on crowdfunding projects. So, and if you're only backing digitally, I can't help you, but I'll send you a virtual description. Zach and I will get back on stream. And smell them together and describe them for you.
We'll need to get Wes to write poetry about it.
That's right. That's what
you have to do. That's what we'll do, yeah.
All right. This has been Procedures at Play. We don't have a good way to end these ones either, but I'm not going to use our other line. So until next time, get out there, have some fun, play some games, go back a game on Orbital Blues Month at ttrpg.link/Orbital Blues Month. Talk to you soon, everybody.
Go break the speed of